Good evening and welcome to The Report with me, John Rees. In tonight's programme we'll be discussing the plight of the Rohingya Muslims fleeing persecution in Burma. But first, in September we reported on former Prime Minister Tony Blair's attack on faith schools as a hotbed of radicalisation. A number of London schools then faced unplanned Ofsted inspections. 2 months on, those schools have received their reports, and one school in the London borough of Tower Hamlets faces being placed into special measures. Yasmin Khatoon has more.
An outstanding state secondary school and group of independent Muslim faith schools in London are to be criticised and branded as inadequate in a report published tomorrow. Ofsted inspectors raised concerns over one of the schools after surveying social media activity. Sir John Cass Academy had been accused of not taking adequate action towards material posted on social media sites associated with the school. In a statement, Tower Hamlets Department of Education said,
"As is common practice, we will work with the leadership of the school to address any issues identified by Ofsted. We do, however, have responsibility for safeguarding all children in the borough and have always exercised our safeguarding duties in full. We are working closely with Ofsted and the Department for Education after their recent inspections, and we will of course act on the findings of the reports. We will continue to work with Ofsted and the DFE to address any issues, potential or otherwise."
Two schools affiliated with East London Mosque are also included in the report after inspections in September. A number of the schools included will be said to have failed in many respects. I asked School Governor Talha Ahmed about the impact of the report on the community, with flagship institutions labelled inadequate.
There is a sense, following from Trojan horse issues in Birmingham, that schools with predominantly Muslim students are being targeted systematically by Ofsted, and this is only going to reinforce that sense of, if you like, besiege or targeted mentality. We know that there's been for some months, if not years now, there are issues about Islamic society and some people deliberately trying to go up to Islamic society. But what we need to keep in mind in relation to this school is that the students who are supposedly involved in this are very small, very few in numbers. There is no suggestion that they were involved in extremism themselves. The allegations are that they have linked or shared links to extremist material, and the school, when it was notified, did not take sufficient steps. But even if it is true, then obviously it needs to be dealt with, and dealt with swiftly, robustly. But to fail a school which has made significant stride over so many years is really very unfortunate, and I think very unwise.
Yasmin Khatoon, Report.
Well, joining me in the studio is Professor Gus John, Honorary Fellow at the Institute of Education. And on the phone, we're joined by Tahir Alam, who's the spokesman for the Association of Muslim Schools. He was in the spotlight earlier this year as Chair of Governors at a Birmingham school, which was alleged to be one of those taken over by extremists. Well, welcome to the programme, both of you. Gus, perhaps we should say this is a Christian school, the John Cass School. Yes. It's an outstanding school, and this is something to do with a student society, and then the whole school's put into special measures. That's pretty extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, it's bizarre, frankly. And I think the comment made by the speaker in the clip is very apt. One can't justify on educational grounds managing a situation like that in the way that the government and Ofsted are doing. Even if it was a larger number of students who were involved, it raises a number of questions. First of all, what kinds of safeguarding guidelines was the school working to? When were those guidelines clarified by the Department for Education? How is it possible that you could really put a damp cloth over the academic performance of all the children in that school because of something that is related to the curriculum, but tangentially related to the curriculum? I would like to know, for example, what the school was doing as a curriculum issue to look at the range of reports there have been about ISIS and extremism and young British-born people going to fight in Syria or whatever else it may be. These are clear issues for everybody, not just for Muslim children in those schools. And one wonders what support, what assistance are children being given to understand those things and their complexity and their dangers, so that it is seen as a central and integral part of the curriculum and of assisting young people to learn, to develop, to discern, to discriminate between good things and bad things. All of that, it seems to me, must be the role of a school. Now, if that school was failing to do that, then what is necessary is for the government to support the school in making sure that it has measures in place. But to condemn the school as being in special measures, rubbishing the efforts of hardworking teachers and equally hardworking and high-performing students is simply mad.
Gus was mentioning there the question of what the guidelines would be about the curriculum, and we should say again that this is about an extracurricular student society. But have I remembered this right, that the guidelines which Ofsted have were withdrawn in June of this year in the midst of the Birmingham case, were they not?
Can I say, first of all, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Association of Muslim Schools. I represent an organization called the Muslim Parents Association, just a clarification.
Thank you.
I mean, the guidelines recently have been altered, really, and some of them are going through consultation. And Ofsted, in my view, are using a sledgehammer approach, really, to crack a nut. If a school which has been graded outstanding, and if indeed there are areas for improvement, which there always will be in terms of their social media policy or whatever it might be, if there are shortcomings in those, the normal, proper, sensible thing to do, which Ofsted has been doing for decades, is that you put those as a recommendation. They are improved. But what seems to be happening here is that there seems to be some kind of a political pressure, really, on inspectors, on the from a security kind of an angle, that these schools are being put into special measures, which is very harsh and, draconian in the sense that, the impact on the schools when this kind of thing happens and goes into special measures is absolutely huge on staff morale, on the education of children, the reputation of schools. And I think those sort of very, very important things really are being ignored against maybe some kind of a very narrow, I don't know what the detail of what they've found is. And to be honest with you, I have to see it myself. I'm not prepared to believe, based on my own experience in Birmingham, mountain out of a molehill was, mountain was made out of a molehill when it came to these kind of issues. And I'm so very conversant with all of that. So really, we have to look at the detail of it. But really, it's a travesty, to be honest. Against people who really would have worked very hard to get this school to be outstanding. It's not an easy thing to do.
Okay. Gus, when the report comes out tomorrow, we're led to understand that there will be an immediate statement by the Secretary of State in Parliament. Now, that can't be a normal procedure, that the Secretary of State immediately gets on their feet as soon as there's an Ofsted report issued.
Well, yes, and what is it saying about those schools that are either Muslim schools, designated as such, or schools with large groups of Muslim students? They must feel very demoralized and constantly under a microscope. You would have thought that the government has discovered some major national plot on the part of everybody educating Muslim students to derail the country or the whole of Europe or whatever. It is excessive. And what is worse, it pays little respect to the efforts of school managers and school students and their parents to work within an environment that encourages high performance, that takes account of children's needs and of the fact that they're operating within a political climate which is very volatile. That's the reality today. But it's a reality for all students in schools. So that the minute you make it an issue for schools with large groups of Muslim students, and you particularize it in terms of a threat posed by Muslim students, that travels out of the school. It travels out of the school into communities. It travels out of the school into the agenda of neo-Nazi parties of UKIP and just about everybody else. And that is what is irresponsible about it. It has to be dealt with as an education matter, unless the government can prove that it was a terrorist matter, in which case they ought to be going inside there and arresting people because they have evidence that they were planning terrorism. If that's not the case, then deal with it as an education issue and an education planning and management issue.
So here, Gus was saying there that we should be looking about the way in which this kind of action travels outside the schools. And of course, in Tower Hamlets, you know, nobody can miss the fact that there is a wider context here. We've had the Panorama programme just recently looking into the council, then the appointment of commissioners to go in and run part of the council's functions. Do you think that there's a kind of a story being built up, so to say, layer by layer about a community that's kind of being portrayed as particularly kind of un-British, I suppose, is the kind of language that's used these days?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a move towards a pariah status, really, is what we're talking about here. And the vilification, of course, has been going on for a while. And what's tragic, actually, is that, you know, the politicians are feeding into all of that. The establishment is now feeding into that creation of those kinds of fears, and you know, I can only, and perhaps the idea is to create fear or something. Really, I don't know. Well, I can't read people's minds, but certainly the impact on the wider community is actually absolutely enormous. Sure. In terms of the degree of trust people can have within schools as well. And our Ofsted inspectors are being expected, are required now to do a job of the intelligence services and maybe the police, really, in one sense. What's happening in Muslims, for example, within the teaching profession. To give you an example, I've had a number of people who are in kind of senior leadership positions, and they basically are saying, look, you know, the teaching profession is not for us in view of all these things. And they want to find alternatives, other ways that, you know, they can fulfill their ambitions and so on. So it is generating, fear. It is generating suspicion, and it's not a sensible policy. It's not a. I mean, I don't know why the Secretary of State is giving the state of tomorrow. At the schools that were inspected in Birmingham, as you very well know, no extremism was found, no radicalism was found of any description, in spite of the 5 months' worth of noise. At the end of the day and the failure of the schools. So I really like to see what the detail of what they find is really, and as a professor has rightfully said, that if it isn't, they haven't found anything significant or substantial and the matter resides within education, then what's the whole commotion and the hype all about, which is doing an enormous amount of damage in marginalizing the Muslim community.
I mean, for us, John, it's bleeding out into two areas that it shouldn't bleed out into, isn't it? On the one hand, there's the security questions, which, as you said, should be completely distinct. And then there's another kind of very ill-informed debate about what British values might or might not be. Do you think we're any closer to understanding that kind of language?
Well, I mean, the government is totally messed up where that business about British values is concerned. It's an unhelpful concept in itself. And it makes the whole agenda even more dangerous, it seems to me, because it's a process of othering groups of people who, what makes the government think that there are the majority of Muslim young people born in this country who do not want to see peace and harmony in Britain, want to contribute to that, to social cohesion, to community cohesion, to economic development? What makes them think that? So the minute you get into that kind of mindset, you rule out all sorts of things, and then you want to be looking under every nook and cranny to ensure that teachers and head teachers aren't harboring terrorists and insurgents. Okay. It is stupid.
Okay, well, on that point, I'm afraid we're going to have to end the discussion, but let's take a look at the rest of today's top